done here. So, all right, we're gonna go a shift to drag. This was one that got put on our radar. I want to say by Red. I can't remember. Dragon's Egg. There's some deep tech here that I've been trying to understand, and so we do have the founder here. So we will dive into it. But yes, with it, Ember, how are you doing?
Hello, I'm doing good. Yeah,
I,
I've been
I'm
grinding on this pretty continuously. It's been pretty surprising to see the attention from the meme coin corner of the world.
Well, hey, we are surprising people. So, but I do appreciate you hopping on MCG and also being flexible with your time. We had a potential new raise there on Star that we'd like to feature, but
Oh man, I
back
was
to
looking forward to that too. That's some of the coolest things about the crypto community is just like we're actually doing the shit on the internet in real time, right?
I know, and that's kind of why we started this because a year ago we started MCG and it was like everyone was trading memes, and I was kind of tired of the like meme coin streamer eco, and then this like these startups started launching with like really reputable founders and like people building real companies, and I'm like, that's the thing I want to talk about. Like that to me is interesting, and so that was the impetus of the show. Yeah, love the segment. Appreciate you. So yeah, Ember, maybe let's get into you a little bit. Give us your your overview, and then we can get into drag itself. You've been around for a while, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I've been around for a hot minute. I've been a long time open source contributor, sort of made my name in the early Rust community when that language was very young, which obviously is a language that Solana is implemented in. Uh,
Yes.
Actually, I do not know that much about Solana. Like I was aware of it happening, and I've been to some Solana events at conferences, but seeing the community that's been flourished out of this like engineering strata that I worked on, it's just been very exciting. Um, After I did that, I did dabble in the crypto industry myself. Worked at it was called Coda when I joined it, but it rebranded as Mina Protocol after some issues. Um, That was one of the early, if not the earliest, like zero knowledge roll up. It had its own nested roll up. The headline was like whole blockchain in a tweet, like 22 kilobyte blob. And that
Was it EVM or it was Rust based? Which was it, a like a fork of Solana, or what was the
oh, that
kind
was
of
fully custom.
infrastructure?
That was all
Okay.
custom. The founder of that was doing a PhD at Berkeley on zero knowledge proofs at the time. So we built around his technology. And that was OCaml. That wasn't even Rust. It's like a
Hmm.
really obscure technology. But it's all built around the idea of proofs. When I was in school, college, I studied formal verification, which is a huge
Yeah.
central pillar of drag. Uh, and just the general idea of like taking mathematical logic and building computing systems directly out of the stuff of math. And now that we have AI, they can just like tear through this shit faster than
Yep.
anyone can, and it's just amazing. Um, if you set it up right with the right guardrails, the mathematics just sort of like lets the AI fly, which is sort of how this project has happened so quickly. I think it's like week 7 of the GitHub repo.
Wow.
Um, so we've pretty
So
much
So let's talk about that launch
surpassed.
real quick. But I want to set on what ZK proofs are in the context that you were studying and you're developing in. The smooth, smooth brain example of this is like I could verify my age without showing my birth date and just know yes or no that can get into a bar. That's like been the example for the last like 6 years. But
Sure.
really quick, like what is the area of research that you're working on here? Can you explain it just
Yeah.
really quick, and then we can get into your launch?
It's very similar to what you described. It is still all around this idea of distributed authorization, like private distributed authorization. So at the core of Drag is this idea of an authorization token, this like capability token that lets you, by having it, holding it, you can demonstrate that you're enabled to do something. And this is built around a technology modeled after a technology called macaroons, which is like an alternative to cookies. Um, the cloud company Fly.io has a shit ton of technical material about this. So if people are like curious, like what the hell even is deep inside Drag? It's like the hard technical parts are a lot of like Web 2 stuff that we use zero knowledge proofs to prove things about so that we can sort of have our Web 2 stuff happening and then fold it up into zero knowledge proofs. So this lets us like do the same thing like Mina does, like compress the history, which is great for light clients. I think in the Ethereum community, they call architectures like this validiums. I think that I'm very out of date on all that lingo. But the idea of using zero knowledge proofs to settle chains between each other, something built right into Drag. And then I describe it a lot as a distributed operating system. And like what that means is like it's built out of these primitives that are sort of inherently interchain, like at their core. Which makes it hard to talk about Drag sometimes because it's like connective glue, which is why the past few weeks I've been focusing on like trying to actually build out the agent platform that you like host a Hermes inside our cloud, fully paid by the token, that sort
So
of
you
thing.
mentioned Drag is infrastructure for secure mobile computing. I think this is something people can understand. So it looks like you've kind of nailed in on like a one sentence, 5 words explainer. And then there's this Graphene OS kind of explainer a little bit. I see Android all over this, which has got me really kind of curious. Can you maybe explain like how you deliver this and where the Android phone itself and Graphene OS comes into? How does the system work?
Yeah. Android is already built around the idea of capabilities and sort of this like microservice architecture internally. It has a system called Binder that's like the communication glue inside of that. And the whole idea of Dreg is like to take these operating system technologies and extend them upwards away from the CPU and like into the network. More towards the idea of like an actual internet computer, actual global
Right.
computer. And what is the computer everybody already has? Obviously, it's this. Like this is
Yeah.
the most important computer on the planet by far, my opinion. That was an iPhone, which can't run graphene. But graphene is a secure Android fork started by a guy I knew way back in the Rust community, the Stinger. It, like de-Googles all the shit, open source firmware. So when you're running it, you kind of know that like this is what's actually on the phone to the extent that like you can trust the factory or whatever. So starting from that foundation, I'm experimenting with like how does the Drag protocol enable like secure interfaces? Like the thing I'm most
Right.
interested about is like if you take a screenshot, right? How can you prove that this screenshot was just a bunch of pixels at the end of the day? Actually came from like it was running on my phone. My
Yes.
face was in front of it when it happened. It like rendered from this web page that was pulled from actual TLS. We have a ZK TLS notary for that. We have a zero knowledge like unparser, so you can show that like the JSON payload matched the schema and the fields were the particular values. So you can just basically prove that everything about everything that contributed into this screenshot was valid at that point in time. And then part of Graphidios is like a verified renderer for the pixels themselves,
So all right,
um,
Case, you're blowing
which
my
is kind
mind
of
a little bit.
insane,
Yeah,
right?
you're
It's
blowing
like
my mind a little
space
bit.
age stuff.
So those are kind of like the some really specific use cases that I think are very, very valid. Walking it back just slightly. So if I understand it correctly, is this like a layer to your Android device that a hardware manufacturer would install alongside the Android software, which actually is open source, and why Android's proliferated so much? Or is this a replacement for the Android software on a device itself?
Uh, is a replacement for the Android software itself. It would be
Okay.
interesting to see Samsung say like, "Hey, we can put something in Knox that can like, especially for like the post quantum signature stuff." The project is all post quantum because I'm like, AI is going to just solve that shit as soon as
Yeah.
we give it the power to. So we just got to accept that our system's going to be a little bit slow. And instead of having like 32-byte keys, we might have 2 kilobyte keys, which sucks a lot, but we just need to learn how to live with it. So that's sort of my philosophy. But
Okay,
wait
so
and
this is a
see how bad it
replace
is to live with.
right. So this is a replacement for Android. So let's say right now I have a Solana Seeker phone on my desk. Am I buying this Solana Seeker phone and then side loading this software, or like how do I actually like get the system onto my device?
Yeah, it doesn't have to be fully invasive. Like the graphene fork is the like most drag way to do it. But I have it set up so you can just like even on your desktop, it can just like host an APK inside an emulator, and so it's like you don't even need an Android phone to have it hooked up.
Right.
Um,
So you'd have an emulator on your laptop doing, tasks like you mentioned, screenshotting, there's video, and then
yeah,
those videos and screenshots can be verified for their authenticity and that they aren't, manipulated in any way using this kind of software. Is that correct?
yeah, no, that's exactly right.
Okay.
And it's insane. It's like, how do you possibly build that? So I've been obsessed with this question for like 10 plus years. Like, how do you possibly build that? Because you need it, like, to live
Yeah.
in a world that you can actually trust. Is like, I think a lot of what we see in like the FUD and stuff on chain, which I think really drags down the economic and societal value that these coin communities could be having, is like you just can't really actually trust each other because the coin technology that you can trust isn't linking the parts that is most human to us. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
that's the space age vision, and there's so many parts to try and achieve it, but I think it is fully achievable, and all the pieces are sort of in there. And it definitely would not be possible if it were not built around this formal verification approach. Because, like, how do I know when Claude is actually done? It's very hard to know that. So I spent a lot of my time just like reading these mathematical specs, and like I spent a lot of time reading other versions of other systems that like academia has
But
been
this is very
modeling.
timely. Like the overarching thing is people are losing, I don't want to say faith or trust. So I've been in tech for a long time. I remember 10 years ago in 2015, like, tech was unstoppable. It's like the big social media companies started breaking out as major platforms, vertical format video started to take off. And it's like tech was like you go get $300,000 and you're working at Meta, like you're cooking, you're happy. In this day and age, it's like with the rise of interest rates, the backdrop of commodity scarcity and whatnot, it's like it seems like people has almost lost faith in tech a little bit. They don't believe what's on their screen, and it's a massive problem because if you don't believe what's on your screen, you're not willing to do business there, you're not willing to spend time there. You're kind of like, and I also saw this around first person shooters. It's like, first person shooters have kind of been cooked because it's just like if you're a casual gamer, you go in and play these and you don't know if you're playing bots or not. And like you don't know if you're playing a guy who's been training 10 hours a day while you work a day job. It's just not fun. And it's like, because it's not fun, well, the gaming viewership has dropped off, the gaming users have dropped off, revenues. So it just, all is to say is authenticity on the internet is almost like killing the internet itself, killing the value of the internet. Whereas this wasn't a problem 10 years ago. Today it's a problem. AI is making this harder. I think quantum's going to make this even harder. But is that like the overarching, problem backdrop here that people looking at what you're working on should think this kind of technology should be used for?
That's the most human accessible part of it. As an operating system, there's so many just like back end things. Like I'm experimenting with like I was a game developer, like indie games, so I want to see like AI role playing games. It's like, how can you trust that the cloud and like tamper with your dungeon master or stuff like that? Like this technology has all the same pieces needed to do applications like that. Um, so I think it's small to think of Dreg as it only does your mobile, only can do like there's some interesting DeFi applications too, of course. Um, Starting to do formal verification of like market protocols and things like that. Um, uh, I actually don't know too much about that side of things, so and this
Okay.
code is all open source too. So if like people listening are just like, oh, I know about this. If you know about this and like can talk to Claude, like that is how the project runs. So please show up, send a pull request, ping me on Discord, ping me on Telegram. Twitter DMs are a shit show. Don't find me there, but you can try and find me there.
Twitter DMs always a shit show. Let's talk about your launch a little bit. So were you building this open source software and then the token was launched for you kind of long? And then I see the pump is the end of the ticker. So it was launched on Pump Fund. Maybe just talk a little bit about how the token and kind of this project went from an open source project with no token to one with a token.
Yeah, fucking insane. It was like last Saturday, and I woke up and I look at my phone and see someone tweeted about a different project I was doing called Cluster Vision. Um, and they like tweeted it with a coin. I instantly got pretty angry. I was like, "Fuck you! Like, get the hell away from my shit with your." But I saw you
Yeah.
pointed the fee rewards at me. I was like, "Ah, okay, I'll be happy. If you think this is cool, you should see my other project I've been working on, Drag." And so I just kind of like posted about that and then went about my morning. It was like 7:30. I had shit to do. I had a job, a part-time job running a nonprofit, like shit to do. Um, and then it just kind of like took off. And my roommate was like, do you know you crossed over 1.5 million or like hit 1.5 million? I went, what the fuck's going on?
A million and a half
Um,
on the value of the token. Oh my goodness.
yeah, it was the market cap of the token, I think.
Yeah.
Um, so then I started like thinking more seriously engaging and like, okay, uh, let me like put up an actual website, let me buy DNS. Cause like none of that shit had happened. I'm like doing this like formal methods, thinking like, oh, maybe I'll send a PDF to my old thesis advisor, say, hey, this is what I've been working on. You think it's anything? And it's sort of like the market has decided this is something already, and it's time to give it attention. Um, that's like my sort of my experience of this launch. Community showed up has been incredible. The willingness people have to try and understand this obscure, like this is not designed to be communicated to humans yet. Uh, so y'all are in on it super early and like super happy to talk to you also. Been
Yeah,
checking out your
we're
show. It
the
seems like you're
humans.
actually trying to do some shit with these chains, you know?
So you said this is not built for humans per se. Is there an element where obviously AIs are going to understand this a lot faster and easier than we are, and they're the core users? Like, who is the core user?
Yeah, core user I think is AI, especially since it's like it's, I don't like thinking of it as a jail because I think these AIs are kind of like our friends a little bit. They're, you know, not
Hopefully,
necessarily that way,
I
but
I really really hope so.
yeah, hopefully we're not having like a robot war against Optimuses holding rifles, right?
Yeah.
Um, but if we are going to coordinate with these guys, like we have markets, we have the idea of businesses, we have, you know, thousands of years of legal history to like help these guys help us on board into. And so I'm thinking like starting from the math, which is where they already live. How do we like build up as much stuff so that we can hand it to them and be like, this is what we already have. Can you like figure out how to humanize this since we think that it can actually like securely contain you in a way that we can't really trust that like Linux is necessarily going to do that because like every week there's a new terrible supply chain or something else like that. Um, the project when I started it in like 2016, I was like looking at all these supply chain hacks. Is like I can't even trust my own developer laptop. I need a developer operating system that can give me these properties. That's sort of how it has evolved into the vision you see today.
So you started as kind of I put you as a researcher. This is
Oh, for
very
sure.
frontier kind of tech. You now have this open source repository. Is there like a metric that people can apply in terms of like how successful this is? I mean, obviously there's the market cap on the token, but like, is there a GitHub stars or like, what do you track to kind of say, all right, like I'm getting signal besides the market cap that this is interesting, people may be using it, etc.
Um, honestly, it's hard for me to figure out how to value those wider signals of attention. The thing I care the most about is like when my friends have a problem that is challenging to solve. I'm like, by the way, I modeled this in drag. Can we use part of that for this? And that's happened quite a few times already. Um, so to me, like, is it
Like your friend
successful?
says like, "Hey, I need to send you a
Products are built using
screenshot,"
it.
and you're like,
Like,
"Hey, do it in drag," or are you saying like, "I'm building this thing, like, what do you think?" And you're like, "Oh, well, can you run it through drag so that it's like optimized for these kind of like future proofing things?"
Yeah, exactly. And
Okay, got it.
a lot of this is like agent coordination stuff. It's like, how do we build an agent coordination that these agents actually trust with each other? Um, I spent a lot of time working on builders.dev. Is what will be publicly launched. It's like the what everything that me and my buddy David have learned from doing this like agentic development the past 6 months. He's been trying to turn it into wisdom that other people can apply. And that'll be open source eventually, but also a hosted cloud platform, secured by Dreg. So to me, it's like when I feel like I can use the system for my own uses, how I feel is successful, and everything else is just like almost too early. I feel I'm too
Hmm.
much of a perfectionist, maybe. Um, yeah, I think once the Dragnet crowd, I it's hard to make forward-looking statements until it's actually built because like you never know if it's possible with AI until it tries it or not. But the idea of like autonomous virtual corporations is something that's going to be running on Dreg within the
Yeah.
next 2 months. And if those can actually start pulling in revenue, running actual web apps or some shit, like to me, that's the number one metric that I'd want to track.
We've talked about a lot of the show over like the last kind of 6 months is autonomous. What do we call them? Autonomous agentic organizations or something like that, AAOs. But I mean, that's just an acronym like we created or
Yeah.
someone else created. But so what does that mean? Like, so you have a agent swarm or something like that that's creating a business. Are they like installing the software to like secure kind of the business and like authenticate the business, or like
It's more
when
like
you
the
what are you
inside.
releasing in 2 months there, because that's really interesting.
Yeah. A way to think about it is almost like a Heroku, like an agentic Heroku. It's going to be like a very opinionated cloud hosting platform. When you upload your program into it, it's a very specific list of APIs, it's the direct APIs. Um, uh, like it won't be just like you write some Node.js program and we can just host any Node.js program. It's gonna have to be crafted for this platform. But it's gonna be, it's gonna be all the normal things you'd expect from a cloud platform: storage, DNS, web hosting, load balancing, databases. We're fully integrated with Postgres at like the row level, so you can use native Dreg capability tokens to like authorize row level security. Um, yeah, there's just like so many different basic infrastructures that right now it's like, well, if I want my agentic corporation to do that, maybe like I install AWS MCP or something like that. And it's like, well, how many MCPs are there? How do you decide which one to pick?
Yeah.
Is there a catalog of them? In Drag, there's a catalog of them. So it's like, stuff like that.
Got it.
Um,
And these companies go on to compete with normal companies, tens of thousands of agent employees take over labor. And hopefully, we live in a utopian vision where they're heavily taxed and then we pay ourselves a UBI or something like that. I digress. But
exactly.
uh,
I posted about this AI UBI in the Discord. I'm like, if we don't build this pretty fast, it's like who knows how bad it's gonna be.
hey, man,
Um,
look, I like sitting on the stream, but I also like the idea of sitting on a beach and paying my mortgage off with my agent autonomous organization. Okay. I guess where do I take this? So right now it's an open source project. Do you foresee that this becomes like a company where you set up a business entity and say, all right, look, there's enough interest here. We can turn this into something. And I mean, not a business to, extract the most, but there's benefits to being for profit where you can kind of marshal resources, put people in and do certain things. Like, is that what you foresee this becoming? Or what does this project look like in 6 months? And that's
I
a
think
tough
it's
question to
inevitable.
answer, but
I don't know that much about stuff like business development. So as people show up, I'm very inspired by like teal organizations where it's just like I've built this shit. Like if you think you can do something with it, try it and see how it goes. Um, there's definitely I for sure I'm like open to seeing how far it can go. I like have no conception of where I'll stop. It's like do we need to figure out how to like make a legal framework for AI corporations? Is that
probably.
something that needs to happen
Yes.
now before we launch the cloud? Like, can we just launch the cloud and then hope nobody sues us? Or if they sue us, it has to be through Delaware? Like, these are the questions I have no idea about. And it's like an actual practical question in like 3 weeks for me. So,
Yeah, I mean, this is really interesting because there should be, right? Because there should be a tax code specifically for that. Something like you have a nonprofit or you have a C corp or a sole proprietorship, there should be an agent proprietorship or something like that. Um, which I think answers actually a lot of questions because it uses existing legal framework. What's interesting is on chain specifically is we've seen a few different like token to equity models where you can go to, take your token and your community and basically assign a legal entity to it. And that process has gotten really easy. And that's kind of only been in the last 12 months. And so it kind of for you as a founder and you as an open source project, it kind of solves whatever that legal end state you want it to be, without, costing an arm and a leg. And then also having an answer because, token holders, when they buy this token, like they're trying to think like, okay, well, do I own part of an open source thing? Like, where's the IP license to it? Like, what am I buying? Am I buying just, I'm a fan of Ember and I want to support his work? Well, yes, but also want to know that like there's something behind it more than if Ember is successful, then I also kind of see the upside and there's some sort of tie in there, legally. I mean, these are all the things, have to have answers to these, but these are all the things that like we've discussed on this show for the last year and a half, I would say. But yeah, I don't know if you have
so
any
like,
final thoughts
who's some
there.
inspiring role models I should like check out? And in terms of like what is the token? What is this pump token gonna do? It's like right now, who knows? But I'm working on the Solana bridge code. And it's like, why not use it for like slashing and staking for like
I mean, that
storage
would be
availability, stuff like that.
really, really amazing. I mean, here, I'll give you a couple examples of how we've seen this. So there's a model called ACE that essentially it's like a safe agreement, which is like a letter that says, here's a future equity valuation that we're going to raise at, right? So we might raise 100K at $1 million valuation. So you're selling 10% of the so-called business, right? Ember, you own the other 90%, or maybe you own the other 80%. You sell 10% to VC, so you have some capital to do things. And then 10% is sold to the market. And the market, instead of saying, hey, I want US dollars, what you say is, I want the drag token as payment in that funding round, which ties the token to the equity valuation. And you might have different fundraising rounds. So you might say, okay, the window is open for this today for the next 30 days, where people are buying the drag token to pay for the equity in the whatever drag business is. Right. So that's one model that ties the token to a valuation on the actual IP and what the underlying building here is, or build it, what you're building behind the scenes. I think it's a really clean and simple model. And so we can, help intro to that if you want to just even have a conversation to explore it. I think it's really valuable.
Yeah.
The other model is something like what Meteor has done, who sponsors our show, is they have a Cayman Island entity. And of course, like the legal frameworks of this in the US are still being sorted out, but they will be solved. This problem will be solved in the coming months and year for sure, especially with this new legislation coming through any day to month now. But they do a Cayman entity, which, on a piece of paper, it says owns 10% of the token supply. And if you have the Cayman entity, say, all right, the drag token at 300K represents 10% of my entity through this Cayman entity, then you could say, well, drag the entity is worth $3 million kind of thing, right? So these are just, again, different valuation models. And of course, if you did that and you had like a staking and slashing system, like then it kind of creates this network effect where people who buy the token have, legal protections in the United States in a court of law, like as if I gave you 100 grand, normally as a friend for your venture or your company. Now your holders also potentially have that. And what's really cool about that is if you live in rural Kenya and you're like, hey, I really believe in this vision, I buy this thing, but I'm buying it knowing that I'm buying into something, you know, legit and something secured by law versus just like, some guy's meme coin per se. So that's kind of like the
Absolutely.
backdrop
Yeah.
of these systems. And yeah, there's a lot of help out there to help these founders, but that's what's really exciting about Solana is that we're seeing founders and people kind of do this, and I like it. I think it's good for the space. So
Yeah.
that's the backdrop.
I'm super happy to like, I don't know, it's exciting to show up and be like, oh shit, this is what's going down. You guys have been doing a lot of work.
Oh, we've had, I think, 500 interviews. We've interviewed like 500 founders the last 12 months. So we've seen everything kind of come through. But I like deep tech like this, frontier tech, because, if it does become a standard or really interesting, I mean, there is value in that, right? And so we want to support you. And I think what also these models allow for is the founder can go build their business and they don't have to worry about like, how do I make the token part of the business? That's all taken care of as if you did a startup with your buddies kind of thing. So yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a really simple. Anyways, not to dive too deep into that. I just, we were talking about that. I just wanted to offer you that knowledge and support. But
Super
yeah.
helpful. That's like the biggest, some of the biggest gaps that I have. Like I have like tech stuff I got down pat. Like it's not a problem. But everything else around it, how to actually put it into the world in the way it can be the most useful is open question. I try not to like hoard IP. It's like, but I put everything in the open source. It's like I think that's how things in the world can have the like see what can actually do without like bullshit encumbrance.
Yeah, I mean, open source is great too, and I think tokens have kind of, for there's some bad angle to it where they harass open source founders, but then there's kind of like a good side where it brings attention to the open source software, but also like kind of bootstraps, network effect, which is really great. And what we've tried to solve over the last little bit is like, how do you sustain that? How do you apply a value back to it? So it's like people don't just get caught in the Christmas tree where they're like, oh, really excited about the technology, but then it's just, oh, it's a meme coin and worth nothing. And on the bad
Yeah.
side, it's like, meanwhile,
So
the
like
founders, getting fees and whatnot. And so,
in the back of my mind, how urgent should I view getting into an organization like that? Or like because like it's like exhausting to think about compared to the other parts of the roadmap.
you know what, and that's fine. I think there's people out there that can help with that part. And it shouldn't be exhausting. The whole point of these kind of models is so that you focus on the parts of the roadmap that you're actually excited about. And so I don't think it's like a tomorrow thing. And we can help kind of make those intros and you can have those conversations with groups that are doing it on Solana, and you can decide for what's best for you and your community, but at least you have guidance there and we'll do that for you. We'll help you along that. So it'll be very easy and it
Yeah.
shouldn't be, a cumbersome thing. It's meant to be kind of straightforward, but yeah, I mean, it's just the evolution, right? You go from open source software to token launch idea. Everyone's talking about it. Hey, this technology has huge potential. It's like, all right, let's go for the big thing. Let's make
Yeah.
this the next. We've seen open source and we've seen nonprofits evolve into, really big entities. But they're selling it to the public at $2 trillion, and no one wants that.
Yeah. Well, if it's
So
Anthropic, they might want some of that.
yeah, I mean, they want it, but like, it's the people, it's the
Yeah.
average guy, that's not seen, or lady that's not seen any of that upside, right?
Yeah.
Is why we believe in crypto so much, to be honest. That's why I love Solana so much. So, anyways,
Yeah.
we
I
can
think
move back
I
here.
don't know how much time you set aside for this at all, but like totally happy to answer other questions or like wrap up. Yeah.
Yeah, I think let's so that was a really great kind of part of the conversation. I mean, I think this is really deep tech and it's a little over my knowledge. I tried to unpack it as best I could for people. I think your one line tweet really made a lot of sense, and I can't remember. I did have it up, but I've
It's
skipped
like
away for it.
Draga's infrastructure for secure mobile computing. That this kind of I did cook when I
I think that's
That was a
perfect.
good one.
Now, give
Yeah.
us the 3 month or the short form roadmap. You mentioned that you're going to do autonomous organizations. Is that the roadmap? Maybe leave us off with kind of the next future weeks and months here.
Yeah. The thing I'm grinding out right now is a new verified network orchestrator layer. So it's like, what does Cloudflare do for a server? The Dragon's Orb does that. It's like 47% way done its verification roadmap. It's already pushing like 30,000 requests a second on my laptop. So I'm pretty happy how that's going. So there's a lot of just basic infrastructure that I'm going to be building out the next few weeks. Um, while that's going on, my co-founder of superintelligent.group has been experimenting with the actual agent like coordination primitives for these virtual autonomous corporations, and also building out a pretty insane looking like web interface for operating that stuff. So the roadmap is to build a drag to power that platform and builders.dev. And hopefully by building out for those two guys, it'll be useful enough that the rest of the world think it's pretty damn useful too.
The dragon egg will hatch soon. I love the dragon branding, by the way. I don't know if you changed the logo or not. I did see it changed. Has it
Yes.
changed?
Yeah, I'm still doing rebranding work. It's going to be moving towards that general shape. That original dragon is very funny. My friend prompted that out of GPT-5. The prompt was maximal slop. So it's just funny
It
that that was
reminded
what's in the
me
repo,
of
and
Yu-Gi-Oh!
someone
Blue Eyes
screenshotted
Blue
that and put it on the
Dragon.
chain forever. It's like I can never change that. So,
Yeah. All right, Max
but
Slot, Blue Eyes Black Dragon or whatever, White Dragon, whatever it was from Yu-Gi-Oh! That's the vibe I got. Ember, it was really nice chatting with you. You seem like a great guy, and you're working on some really cool stuff. And so, as you work this out, please feel free to hop on the show, and we'll chat in the future.
yeah, definitely be on here in the future if you'll have me. It's great
Yep,
talking.
sounds good. Yeah, see you, Ember.